Hello, everybody. Raven Knight here. Today I want to talk about Dead by Daylight. I know it's been a bit. If I'm being honest, I don't play Dead by Daylight all that much anymore. I mean, I pick it up and toy with it now and then, but if I'm being honest, a lot of my faith in behavior has kind of died. The game is nigh unplayable for me. Getting into killer lobbies takes an eternity, and even when I do get in, I feel like the game is so heavily Survivor-sided sometimes, but playing Survivor, on the other hand, feels so incredibly boring at times because it's usually all just very repetitive. And I don't have a whole lot of friends who play the game who are willing to take time to play with me, so it's not something that I get really excited to play anymore. Then after the whole buggy mess that was the Walking Dead chapter and the absolute horrendous PTB thing lately, I've kind of reached the point where I think behavior doesn't care about the game near as much as they should. Do I think the game is dead? No, I don't. I don't think it'll ever truly die until behavior pulls the plug themselves because the game is just too enjoyable to too many people. It's one of the only asymmetrical games to be successful and long-lasting, and there's going to be a company that milks that as long as they possibly can, especially as long as they can get licensed chapters. And there will always be people, of course, who want to play the game even as they rage at it. It is kind of the addiction of a very entertaining IP. As for me, much like with For Honor and Rainbow, despite my frustrations and failures as a gamer, I can at least appreciate a game for its lore. However, I've noticed a distasteful lack of good lore from the game over the past few original chapters. With the exception of Sable Ward, whose lore was somewhat passable, the last genuinely good Survivor lore I can think of was Yoon Jin Lee. As for killers, the Knight and the Oni were the last really good original killers with lore I could stomach. The Oni had some of the best lore of any of the original killers, and the Knight was at least decent. But for the last few chapters, so many killers and survivors have just had very pitiful lore. So, with the announcement of a coming Thai survivor and killer, I was curious how they would approach this. The designs are at least good. Even the survivor looks cute. I've been saying for a while I miss decent looking survivors, and yeah, Vee Boonyasak looks really good. But how is the lore? This can be what makes and breaks it all for me. The last original survivor was Arella, and the last original killer was the Houndmaster. And both of those characters had lore so bad I had to do a whole video for each one ranting about how bad they were. So, I was concerned. But I'm very pleased to say Vee and the Krasue's lore is really good. Now don't worry, both characters will still get their own videos after I've played them both a bit more and get a feel for their perks and powers. But just from reading their lore, I can safely say both Vee and the Crosui's lore are genuinely well done. Now, Vee's lore, the Survivor's lore, isn't groundbreaking or anything, but it's serviceable and makes her more believable without leaning on a Mary Sue angle. But the Crosui's lore, I'd actually argue we haven't had lore this good since the Oni. So, let's get into talking about it, and we'll start with the Survivor's lore first. We'll talk about the Survivor first. We're going to read it together. The energetic Vee Boonyasak always loved exploring and getting into trouble, but more than anything she loved playing the drums. She began to teach herself how to play at an early age. She learned traditional instruments and styles, but really fell in love with modern rock. By the age of 18, she could play virtually any song on the radio after hearing it once. As a young adult, she went to a local show and saw Tick and the Kicks. She immediately fell in love with the band's scrappy sound. Tick's vocals had a gravelly urgency, and Crit's huge guitar sound filled the room. The only problem was the tired old drum machine that took ages to reset between each song. But she couldn't get their music out of her head. With no records or merch, the only way she could hear them was live, so she followed them from show to show, learning the simple beats programmed into the drum machine. The band finally had their big break, opening for a group of local legends. They sweated their way through soundcheck in the massive uncooled venue when disaster struck. The drum machine crackled and smoked, finally giving up the ghost. They were loading back into the van when Vee offered to play with them, noting that the house drum set was already sound-checked. With nothing to lose, they let her play, and the crowd was whipped into a frenzy. Even Tick and Crit seemed rejuvenated by her brash, loud style, and boundless energy. She became a permanent member of the band the next day. Now, I want to pause here and address what we're hearing here. Some might already jump on this and say, uh-oh, Mary Sue alert. And I will grant you, I see the signs there. I do see the signs. But I'm willing to give this a little bit of leeway for two reasons. The first is, it did not say that she was just this master drummer out of nowhere. The lore clearly states at the very beginning that she had a passion for music and learned to play a lot of things just by ear. So if she had this deep passion for Tick and the Kicks music, and she knew most of, if not all their songs by heart and could replay the music, then it makes sense that she could pick up a drum and maybe even play along with it. So I do think that that does technically fit. I think that that works okay. Is it questionable? A little bit, but I have known guitarists and drummers who are good at playing and replicating music based on hearing it. I had a guitar teacher who could do that. He could hear a song and figure out the chords after a few listens. So it's not impossible. The second thing I like about this is they didn't just let her on right away. They were hesitant. They had a drum machine that was on the fritz. They were about to step up into this really big opportunity for them, and then this kid comes along in their moment of need and says, hey, I'm willing to try. What do they have to lose at that point? They still want to play, so why not just give her the chance? It's better than going out and saying, hey, sorry, we can't do this, and throwing away all their chances. They have one or two options. Either one, definitely fail, or B, take a chance on this girl who could help them out, and she ended up helping them out. The only area where I think it suffers a little bit is where it says, even Tick and Crit seemed rejuvenated by her brash, loud style and boundless energy. That's a little questionable because it implies that she was just so good it even got them pumped up. But then again, you could also make the argument that they were so relieved that they had someone to help fill in a place on the band. So, hey, it still works. I understand why some people would say it's Mary Sue level, though, because what we have here is the thing that I talk about a lot, a sort of a moment where the plot becomes a little convenient for her. And what I mean by that is she just so happened to be at a big sellout thing where they are actually performing big time for the first time for some local legends, and that just happens to be where the drum machine fizzes out, and that just happens to be where she's there, and the drums happen to be sound checked. She already knows what she's doing. Yeah, I can totally understand why someone would say that's a little too convenient, but I'm willing to accept it as long as we don't see too many more. Okay, so let's keep going. After jamming for a few weeks, they decided it was time for a new name. Vee suggested they keep some of the old name, Axe Kick. They played their first show under the new name to a modest but enthusiastic crowd who had shown up just for them. Vee had her friend Mose record the show and post it online. Before long, they were getting buzz from around the world. Vee spent all of her off time making shirts and patches. Axe released an EP online. Before long, the three were scraping out a modest living. Okay, so far so good. When Tick showed the band a video of a strange phenomenon in an abandoned opera theater across town, Vee's thrill-seeking instinct kicked in. She said they had to play a show there. Tick and Crit were immediately on board. A heavy show at a massive abandoned venue was going to be the gig of the century. The night before the performance, they went to scout the venue. Everything was covered in dust and grime. The floors creaked with every step. It was perfect. In the back, they found a dressing room filled with musty old opera outfits and cracked cassettes. With time to kill, they grabbed a couple of pieces from the costumes and threw one of the tapes on. What they heard stopped them in their tracks. Ghostly, unnatural sounds, voices that seemed to dance around room. Disturbed, they stopped the tape immediately and made for the exit. The next day, the venue was packed. Axe Kick sounded tighter than ever. The crowd was losing their minds. Sweat pooled on Vee's brow as she played harder and faster in the suffocating heat. Above the crowd screamed, she heard something else. The voices from the tape. She closed her eyes to block it out, focused on the beat, the noise of the crowd fading as she lost herself to the encore. As the song ended, she opened her eyes and could barely see. She wiped her eyes thinking it was the sweat, but it was something else. A thick, black fog. The crowd was gone. Tick and Crit were gone. All she could hear were the echoes of her drums in the distance. She stood from her stool and strode into the inky blackness to find her friends. Okay, and that is the lore. So my honest thoughts are this. It's pretty decent. I'm not going to say it's groundbreaking, like it's not quite as good as Yoon Jin Lee's lore or anything like that, but I do think it's actually pretty good. What we have here is we have a girl who literally is just taking an opportunity to play with her dream band. They take her in, they're starting a decent career, but right as it's just about to take off, they take a chance on a haunted opera house, and she ends up falling for it. Now, there are two problems that I see that do stick out. The first one is, why was she the one chosen by the entity? Why didn't it take Tick and Crit too? Why just her? This is also an example of when it happened in front of other people, and I think the only time we've ever seen that was with Michaela. Not saying that it can't be done, I'm just saying it's a little unusual, so that was a little weird, but I don't have any problem with it per se. It's just something that I thought was a little outside the ordinary with the entity. And, of course, the question of why it chose her in the first place. The second thing that I'll say, and it is, again, a minor problem, but I will admit there are moments of convenience that I see. Just, the just so happened moments. Like, oh, she just so happened to find Tick and Crit at their big gig. It just so happens that their drum machine busted in. It just so happens that the drums on stage were already sound tuned. It just so happened that they let her join on and play. These moments do make it feel like, it's a little questionable. But here's the thing. Sometimes the plot does feel convenient, but I will give it this credit. They didn't do it a whole lot throughout, and after giving us that one moment of convenience, it really didn't play it up any worse than before. I also like the little addition that the place they wanted to play at was probably the place tied into the killer, which means that the killer and survivor do have that connection, which is music, and we'll get into the killer in just a second. But I do want to say that Vee's story is good. Vee Boonyasak is a very good piece of survivor lore, so I was very impressed with it. But if I liked Vee Boonyasak's lore, and I like her design, which I do, she looks good, and her lore is good, we gotta talk about the killer's lore, the Crossui. This killer's lore blew my mind. So, let's not waste any time, let's read that too. Barung Sukapat's operatic rehearsals in Thailand were a sea of emotion, but despite tiring efforts, she was unable to become anything more than an understudy. What started as a desire to share her gift became an unshakable need for fame. Her childhood friend Janjira was her biggest supporter, but aside from a shoulder to cry on, there was little more she could offer. It wasn't until Malai, a fellow singer who had quickly risen the ranks, reached out that Burong's fortunes changed. Malai presented Burong with a glass bottle, a clear liquid within, and advised her to drink it, her tone deadly serious. Each night, another will inhabit your body, but you will be a success on the stage like me. Now, I want to pause here and take a look at that first paragraph again. What started as a desire to share her gift became an unshakable need for fame. Hold on to that sentence, because I was talking about this lore with a friend of mine, and he said that he didn't like the lore because of the ending of it. It didn't make sense to him. But I drew him back to this sentence, and it changed the way he viewed it, okay? Hold on to that sentence. We will come back to it. So we have Malai, who was another popular singer, giving her a bottle and saying, if you drink this, it will give you the success you're looking for, but another will inhabit your body at night. We'll pick up from there. Burong laughed at the peculiar game. Even so, she wanted more than anything to believe its truth. She grabbed the bottle, swallowed every drop. In the following weeks, Burong's skin felt softer, and she found a depth in her voice that she never knew existed. During her next audition, the director took notice, enraptured by the sound that rang through the theater. As the song ended, Burong thanked the director before coughing blood into a handkerchief. She stuffed it into her pocket, choosing ignorance. Whatever was happening to her was working. She wouldn't dare stop it now. That night as she slept, a soothing warmth dripped down her body. She bolted upright, hand fumbled for a lamp that wasn't there. She lay in a yard she did not recognize, covered in blood. Next to her, a ravaged chicken coop, feathers and gore staining the ground. She stumbled home before the city awoke to a new day. Under a scalding shower, the spit up blood, dreading the thought that this hadn't been her first hunt. In between heaving sobs, she prodded her abdomen, searching for where something might hide within. She called Janjira, who couldn't bring herself to reveal the horrors. Instead, telling her friend she'd been restlessly sleepwalking each night and needed someone to coax her back to bed, Janjira agreed to help. That morning, Burong woke to Janjira's hand lovingly placed on her cheek. As she looked up, she choked on her cries. Janjira's severed hand fell from the bed, landing on her disemboweled carcass. Wow. For hours, she sat beside her friend's remains in a state of silent shock. Janjira was dead, and for what? When she couldn't stand the smell of blood any longer, she grabbed cleaning supplies. As the sun set, a deep stain remained on the carpet. She walked through the streets until she reached Malai's home. Malai opened the door, and upon seeing Burong's eyes, immediately defended herself. She claimed she committed no wrong. She had been cursed, and the only way to be rid of it was to pass it to someone else. She believed that Burong, in her desire for fame, could withstand the torment and achieve what she'd always wanted. Anger stirred within Burong. She fell to the floor as furious heat spilled over her. Malai stared in horror while Burong dug nails into her own skin, ripping at the burning agony. As she tore chunks of flesh from her neck, her entrails wriggled inside. Her head tore free from her body, a long string of organs dragging behind like a fish slapping across the shore. A seething hunger took over as Burong's disembodied head lifted into the air. It swooped at Malai, ravenously mauling the woman until nothing remained but blood, hair, and bone. Burong awoke to the mess, unable to find the sympathy to shed a tear. Note that as well. That's going to be important. We're going to finish this first, but then I'm going to talk about all this. She returned home, allowing her thoughts to swirl until the room filled with light. The phone rang. The director's voice cut through the haze that had settled in her mind. He offered her the leading role. Burong fell to her bed and cried, not from sadness, but relief and elation. Oh, note that. During the evenings on the Bangkok stage, her stars shined bright. At night, she fed the creature within, and together they thrived in a world of hunger and song. But the creature wanted more, and one night it was presented just that, a promise of meat hung on hooks, dripping and tantalizing blood. And then there was fog. Okay, let's talk about this. Why do I love this lore? This is beautifully done. What we have is a story of Burong, an operatic singer in Thailand who just wanted to make it big. At first, she just wanted to sell her singing voice, but as she got bigger and bigger, she needed fame. She needed attention. She needed people chanting her name, but she wasn't getting that. She was being held up. Now, in any other story, this would be the moment where she has to really learn, it's not about what other people think of you. It's about the gift you have and sharing it with others. But she doesn't want that. She decides she's going to cheat a little. She's going to take this drink that Malai gives her and become a monster, become a Crossui. And she's scared of it at first. This is terrifying to her, and she wants it gone because, hey, not only is it scaring her that she's sneaking out at night and killing chickens and stuff, she kills her friend when her friend tries to help her, so she's freaking out. And so she goes to Malai to demand answers, and Malai reveals, I was cursed with it, but the only way to get rid of it is to pass it on to someone else, and I thought you'd be okay with it because you're obsessed with fame. Now, again, and in the other story, that declaration would be the moment where Burong says, I don't want fame anymore. If fame is going to cost me my humanity and cost me my friends, I don't want fame. And then she learns the importance of, not having fame and not having fortune. It should be all about the gift. That's not what she does. She ends up killing Malai and not even feeling sorry for her. Because in her mind, it is about her. Why do you think she has this need for fame? It's about her and her needs. Malai cursed her, misled her, and that led to her being cursed now. She has no sympathy to offer. Then when she goes home trying to think of what to do next, she gets the word she's got the leading role in the next opera. And now her whole mindset has shifted. Hold on, wait a second. This curse, maybe I don't need to get rid of it just yet. After all, I just got the leading role in this opera, and that's what I've always wanted. I've always wanted this. It's all about the fame, man. It's all about the attention. It's all about me. So you know what? I'm sad that my best friend Janjira is dead. That sucks. But you know what? She always wanted me to be a star. Janjira was my biggest supporter. So she'd want this for me, obviously. So as long as I keep the Crossui fed at night, I can be a star by day. She decides to make a deal with the devil or a deal with the beast and herself specifically. But what she doesn't count on is that the Crossui is going to get hungrier and hungrier and hungrier. And eventually, it's no longer satisfied with just killing chickens or goats. It wants people. And the entity is always looking for new killers and says, hey, I think I've got a deal for you. Now, you gotta wonder, what does Burong herself think of this? Burong wanted fame and stardom and attention. She wanted to be a musical sensation, but now the entity is basically given over everything to the Crossui, not her. What if she's kind of become a slave to the Crossui now? At first, she was the one setting the deals for the monster and her, but now the monster's like, all right, you were the one setting the terms before, now I'm setting the terms. Now I set the deal. It's my turn to take control. So now Burong is now the unwitting follower of the Crossui, feeding this monster that is ever hungry, ever needing, ever bloodthirsty, and she can't even be the star that she always wanted to be when she was given this curse. The death of Janjira, which she, tried to rationale as, she was my biggest supporter. She'd want me to be successful. Not even worth it anymore. Malai, you gotta wonder, why wasn't Malai chosen? Probably because she recognized the danger of this curse and said, I don't want it anymore, I gotta get rid of it. Burong, had she taken the way out that we would expect, say, I don't want fame, and just hand over this curse to someone else or find a way to end the curse or maybe end her own life to prevent it from spreading any further, this would have been a very somber but meaningful ending with a valuable message to it. Instead, Burong took the path of, you know what? Anything for fame, baby. Anything for attention. Anything for me. And there's something very dark, twisted, and also real about that. There are so many people in the real world who would do the exact same thing. That is crazy. And I think that's such a cool idea. That is such a cool direction to take with this killer. A person who is genuinely a good person at first, a little fame obsessed, a little self-obsessed, you get that. And at first doesn't like what she's become. She doesn't like being the monster. She doesn't want to be the animal. She doesn't want to be the freak. But as she sees what it's doing for her, she starts to make a deal with it. Starts to work out with it. And then slowly that monster that she thinks she's in control of, that she thinks is helping her career, in the end, she's only serving it. I just think it's awesome. This is a really well-written piece of lore. I will still be doing individual videos for each one after I've played them a little bit more, gotten a hang for the Crosui's powers, gotten an idea about how their perks work. I'll make individual videos for each one. But I wanted to talk here about the lore behind these two and read them to you so you understand this lore is actually really good. This lore was handled really, really, really well. So I wanted to share this with you guys. What do you guys think of the lore? Do you think it's good like I do? Do you think it has some problems? Regardless of the fact that I'm not good at playing this game, and it's just a game that I'm not quite as in love with as I used to be, I still think the lore can have its really strong moments, and this was one of those moments. So that's where I stand. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you guys later. Take care.